Hi. So I did the the corrupt economy of Peru. So my hypothesis, I had 5 different hypotheses. The first one is corruption has an increased effect on the economic growth of Peru. Also, corruption has a negative impact on Peru's civilian well-being. And then specifically to the time frames, between 1993 and 1996, there's corruption that you can see within the Peruvian economy. Also, during the years of 1998 and 2001, was there corruption that affected the economy, or was it just the global economy was in a recession? And then my third specific date question is between 2004 and 2008, and it's just asking, once again, was it a cause of corruption or just global economic impact? Those are my hypotheses. So, to get into the specifics, I've done 2 research papers, and one was about the coal miners throughout mining, and the article went on to state that there is, specifically the article stated there's a 14% decrease or government tax revenue, and that had a 5% increase on the GDP between 2005 and 2011. But throughout the article, it talks about the government taking from the economy. It talks about poor water quality and also like the humanity side of the whole situation. And there's a quote here. It says, "Protests have focused concern for the environmental degradation, and the lack of benefits to the local communities affected by mining." And that just goes on to say that there is an economic impact, but there's also a humanities impact. And then the second article I found was about police corruption within Peru. And there was specifically the president, Ollanta Humala. He even had said he created this program. He kicked out 30 officers, general officers of 45 that worked for the Peruvian government. And then after doing so, there was speculation within government agencies saying that either they were just kicked out wrongfully or some had retirement or whatever. There was speculation on why they got kicked out. And then even the president of Peru, Mr. Humala, he had gone on to say that it was just time for change. And that kind of shows there is corruption within the government, because you can see that the government kicks people out on a corruption accusation, but then they even cover it up with more fluff to the whole situation. So to get into the details of it all, this is my graph, and it's comparing the average of the average GDP of the region compared to Peru's GDP. And you can see that specifically between 1993 and 1995, there's large spikes. And also throughout between 2004 and 2008, Peru's economy is growing, while the region their GDP is staying constant. And throughout those times, you can either assume that it was Peru, their corruption may have been increasing it, but also the iron correlation with the U.S. economy, specifically in 1995, when the U.S. economy tanked, so did the regional economy here. And then also also when the U.S. housing market went down in 2008, Peru's economy went down too. So, and this actually, you could even show the housing bubble, if you relate it to the U.S. economy, Peru's bubbling up and then it just tanks too. So then I compared Peru's exports to the region and Peru's imports to the region. And I chose these two because imports and exports can show what a company is trading with others, and if there's corruption going on within those trades, it could affect the economy. So back in 1994 to 1997, the regional economy had tanked while Peru's economy was far above the average. It was almost upwards of 7% greater than the regional economy. And then also, when there's downward trends, Peru falls farther than it. So Peru specifically is hit harder than the region because it's more volatile. And I believe this to be because there's more corruption within Peru's economy, and my graphs back that statement up. And also with exports, there's spikes back in 1993 where Peru's economy, there's claims that Peru's economy stays far above the regional average, and it can be because of exports within Peru's economy. And then, so comparing it, compared to GDP and corruption, I had chosen the World Governance Indicator and found the estimates that they had done. And their methodology for how they came up with their numbers was through surveys, and then they aggregated it on a 0 through 10 system. And I compared that to Peru's GDP, and through doing that, Excel can spit out an equation, and Peru had a 5.5 on that 0 through 10 scale, which shows there is corruption in Peru. So in conclusion, looking back to all my hypotheses, the mining industry does support that there is corruption because civilians do lay claim and say that corruption does take place. Also the police force, there were surveys done that say that civilians believe there's corruption within the Peruvian economy. Throughout my GDP graphs, they show there's more corruption because Peru is above the average at times and below the average at other times. They're very volatile. Imports and exports, as I had previously explained, they're on average 7% higher than the average. And the corruption indicator from the World Governance site had also backed up this claim. And that's my presentation.